I believe life is an exquisite opportunity to explore all facets of who we get to be, who we are not, and who we choose to create ourselves to be. I believe life is happening for us. It's a wild and exciting adventure, and around every corner, we get to dive in and explore how or why things are showing up for us the way they are. From the people, the places, the patterns, and even the situations. It's our own healing adventure. Imagine, who will you choose to be in the midst of all the highs and all the lows? You get to say how life goes. You first have to be aware of why and how it's showing up for you. Consider, life gives you the opportunity to mold, shape, and expand into your greatest self. Come with me on this journey where I explore various aspects of my own life and how I tackle my own healing adventures and what I learned from them. Maybe what I have to share could make a difference for you or someone else. Welcome to Life's Healing Adventures. I'm your host, Tara Michelle. All right, so welcome back to Healing Adventures. I'm Tara Michelle, and I brought back my dear friend, Kinde Malott. I'm so excited to have her with us. We did a podcast recently on health and well-being, and we had a lot of great response to that. And there were also some nice little nuggets that we recognized we could dive into on this episode, and really where we're going to explore how we rewire ourselves and tapping into our self-awareness and how that's important and how that coordinates with your health and well-being and health and fitness. But before I go into that, I do want to introduce Kinde Malott. Thank you so much for being here. And if you want to say a little bit about yourself before we get started, just to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
Yes.
These are just such great conversations, and
Yes.
they're like, they just get me jazzed up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I love it.
So tell us a little about who you are.
So
You're my trainer. You're my trainer for
yeah,
one.
yeah.
But
So
who are
I'm an
you?
online, I'm a virtual coach. So I coach women's health through nutrition, weightlifting, and a lot of inner work and mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a nurse in my past life. So left nursing, gosh, has it been 7 years, 6 or 7 years ago now, and dove into entrepreneurship and just like really went after this whole health and well-being thing. And we owned a gym for a while. And then during COVID transitioned online, and the transformations have been remarkable.
Yes.
And it's been amazing to be able to impact so many people's lives in a positive way. So
Yeah. Well,
keep
thank
going.
you. Yes. And thank you. Thank you for coming back and joining me here. This is just so much fun. And I'm excited about this topic. Um, I know you and I were having a conversation recently, and I saw somebody post, I think on your Facebook, um, about when I had mentioned, when I'm angry, then I know that that's hiding that I'm really scared.
Mhm.
There's something's coming up for me that is scared. And I think you and I have talked a lot, not I think, I know you and I have talked a lot about just in this journey working with you, how I recognize when I haven't eaten enough protein, or I haven't eaten
Mhm.
enough carbs, or I can really feel what's happening in the body now. And you talk about the importance of that self-awareness. So I want to ask you, from your perspective, w- where or when did you recognize that inner self-awareness for yourself, like that voice, that knowing within you?
Wow, that's a good question. I think I noticed the lack of it first.
Mm. Say more about
So
that.
yeah, so when I got through my body transformation, it was very much I don't want to say black and white because it wasn't black and white, but I didn't have a guide. I kind of just like failed my way there.
Mm-hmm.
And
I love
when
that
I
you
got
failed
to
your way there.
I did. I really did. I did it all the wrong ways. I did the detoxes, the pills, the medical weight loss, the shot. Like I did it so many different ways. None of them worked. So when I finally got a barbell in my hands and learned how to eat the way that I needed to. It was all through trial and error on my own. And I got the body and I was like, oh no. Like that like feeling was still in my body. So like the
Mm-hmm.
physical, like the things people could see didn't fix like
Mm,
what was happening inside. And so
mm-hmm.
I noticed the lack of it, but I didn't know what it was. Again, it's kind of like the food. It's like you're trying to figure this thing out, but everything around you is pointing you in the wrong direction. And
How
so
did
I
it
know,
feel? How did it feel when you say like the lack of, I love that. You're recognizing the lack of, how did that feel in your mind and in your body?
so my mind, I, it was almost like, and I know now it's probably a combination of things, but it was literally like I legitimately remember looking in the mirror and just being like, oh shit. Like whatever this feeling is that I was trying to get rid of or get away from, or it was still there. So my brain was basically like, and I think the way I'm wired, I wanted to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
So I noticed that I still felt like something was off, and my
Mm.
brain immediately was like looking for an answer.
Did you still feel sad?
Empty, sad,
Empty? Mm-hmm.
like lost,
Mm-hmm. You have a
like
great body. You have a great body, and you still feel lost.
yeah,
When
and
when the outside world says, "Hey, you get that great body and you're gonna feel better." It's all
yeah,
you're gonna get the guy or the girl, and you're gonna
and
get the job, and you're gonna get, and there you had the body.
yeah, and that is how I felt my whole life. So like
Mm.
when that feeling hit me again, I think it was almost like it's like a double gut punch because my whole life I feel like people kind of looked at me that way. Like
Mm-hmm.
she's like so bubbly, everyone loves her. She's so like I was the girl that would get like straight A's and then like I sat the bench my junior year for basketball, but then came back and was a starter my senior year because I worked my butt off because I had to like I just had to achieve. Like I had to
Yep.
and it's like there's duality there, right? Like that
Yep.
drive is amazing, but the energy behind the drive
The
is so
what? Yeah.
important.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
The what's
And
driving it.
so unwinding that has done a lot for me, but yeah, it was just so weird because that my whole life I remember having this feeling of just being empty, being depressed, being anxious, and really like even at like 9 years old, asking the question like, what is the point of all this? Like, why are we doing all this? Like
Mm-hmm.
very odd questions for a 9 year old to be like laying on my bedroom floor, like zipped up my backpack and was like, finish that paper. Like, what? Why are we doing this? Like, what is the
Yes.
point? No one could answer it.
Yes.
No one had an answer
Yes.
for me.
Yes. It's funny when you bring that up, when you're talking about, in school and sports. I had a similar drive, but what was behind that drive for me was for people to like me and accept me because I was quote unquote different. I looked different. And I remember this is funny. It's kind of unrelated, but at the same time it's related. I remember the day that I realized why I was a homeowner. And I was a homeowner so people this was back in, what year was that? I lost my house in 2006. That was 2005. I was in a course through Landmark Education. It's called the Wisdom Course. And I don't, or no, maybe it was partnership. I don't know what we were talking about. I don't know what the conversations were at that time, but we were getting down to the nitty gritty of self, right?
Mhm.
And I heard this voice at the like whisper. It was an inner voice that definitely needed to be rewired. But the voice was the whole reason I'm a homeowner is that so people won't see me as a stupid, dumb black girl from the gutter. Like some,
Yeah.
some thing, some reason, like if I'm a homeowner, if I have some kind of career,
Yeah.
then they won't see me a certain way. And the moment I recognized that, I remember I was on the phone with a dear friend. I will never forget the conversation. And he was coaching me because I had this space of emptiness, like what you're talking about. Because here I
Mm-hmm.
have this house, I have, money, I'm 35, like life is amazing, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm still feeling so empty inside. And he asked me a couple questions, and I just remember saying because I'm a stupid, dirty black girl in the gutter. And I was like,
When you said that out loud, were you like, oh, whoa?
I was standing in my beautiful manicured garden with all these flowers. I will never forget the moment. And 6 months after that, I lost my house. 8 months after that, I lost my house. I lost everything. Like it was the beginning of the dismantling of that version of me. 35 years I was built on top of this conversation called I'm a dirty black girl from the gutter. And that's the
Mhm.
only reason why I'm building all of this stuff so people see me as something that's acceptable. And when I saw that, I was just like, that's mind blowing. It's like effing crazy. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And then I lost everything. That was like the
Why?
beginning of
What
the
happened?
downturn.
Like, do
I
you think it was on purpose or was it just like
I
life
think it
kind of
I
event?
I think it was like a chain of events. It was a spiritual moment. I think it was a deep inner awakening for me.
Yeah.
And I was grasping at straws to hold on to everything when the universe kept saying, and at the time, this was right before the big crash. So this was before the '08 crash. And I had this big mortgage because I was trying to build my coaching business. I was trying to be an entrepreneur, doing all this stuff. I made lots of wrong choices. And the universe kept saying, sell your house, sell your house, sell your house. But my identity was
Mm.
wrapped up in if I sell this house, what are people going to think of me?
And you're just this broke, dirty black girl.
Yes. And if I change these things, then what are people going to think of me? Like I was still so
Oh.
wrapped up in that. And so there like it was the downward spiral, and then I ended up getting into this relationship that was then I ran off to Arizona and lived on some ranch with this relationship. I mean, it was one bad choice after another, but it was all inside of that moment of recognizing the context and the foundation in which my whole world was built on.
I think that's funny, and I want to talk about that for a second because
Hmm.
I've done this to people. I've
Hmm.
dismantled their shit, and then
Yes.
they leave my world, and because they initially sign up to change their body, I will dismantle these stories for them.
Yep.
And none of my clients ever leave like on bad terms, but they'll finish their contract, they'll go,
Yep.
they'll come back, and they will
Yep.
say, I'm not now I'm ready.
Yeah.
But they come to me for the body,
Yeah.
unwind this story, then
Yep.
they wouldn't care about the body. They'd have to go fix these
They have
things.
to go be with the
Then
fact that they had that story. Yes.
then they would
Yes.
come back. And it's very funny because depending on the person, some people have the capacity to hold that and keep
Yep.
moving. But
Yep.
it depends on what the story is and what the like how many beliefs are rooted and how many
Inside of
things
it.
they've built
Yes.
around that. So
Yes.
for you, I'm curious, do you think it was your like because I really do think this is part of healing,
Hmm.
being able to get honest and get back down to almost like rock bottom where you really just don't have
Hmm.
anything and
Yes.
and self-express
Yes.
and then rebuild yourself. You're kind of going back to like your teenager self,
Yes. Yes.
and
You
then
know,
you're able to come back and rebuild your life.
yes. I mean, it was interesting from the time I lost my house, which I was terrified. I didn't want anybody to know what I was going through because it was in the beginning of short sales. And, I mean, short sales were a thing in the '80s, but I was a kid then. So, now as I'm an adult going through this whole short sale thing, and I ended up in foreclosure. And then a couple years after that, I'm in Al-Anon trying to save myself from this relationship I got myself into. And I left that relationship with not a dime in my pocket. Like his dad gave me a $500 check that lasted me months because I just figured out how to live on nothing. And then I ran into another relationship, which is, my ex-husband. And I mean, my car was taken because it was repossessed. It was this whole chain of events of breaking down and dismantling like who I was at my core. And I used to call it my 40 years in the desert, the story in the Bible, like that was my 40 years in the desert. Like literally I moved out to the damn desert. But, and here I am today. And it took me 10 years to be able to buy a house again,
Mhm.
and here we have this house here, which I love this house that we could spend the rest of my life here. I love it here, but it's and then here I am today, like I don't see that's not the version of who I am anymore. I don't see that little dirty black girl in the gutter or whatever it was. But it, to your point, it is this dismantling, and you have to be with that shit. And then, as it's almost like a slow moving train wreck, when you recognize that conversation, then all the stuff that was built up behind that conversation is like do 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 do.
It,
It kind of
yeah,
blows up. And
yeah.
and that can take months, years, and for me it was a decade. It was a decade of really deep inner self-work to find my self-worth. And even inside of this conversation, and I had trainers back then in my 30s. Now today working with you, rewiring those conversations
Mhm.
and and feeling like what we talk about, that feeling when your body is saying, like my body will literally say you didn't eat enough protein, or you didn't have enough carbs, or you need to stop because you're now working against yourself because your body isn't properly fueled. And so if
Mhm.
you do the full 5 sets at the rate that you're feeling right now, you're it's just stop at 4, girl, because
Yeah,
you don't
you're
have
not going to
enough
get
energy.
anything more. Yeah, you're not going to
No,
get anything more out of it.
no, as a matter of fact, you're probably going to cause yourself to
Risking.
go into inflammation, you
Yep, you're
know?
risking. Yeah.
Yes, it's amazing.
And what a freaking cool thing to be able to honor yourself in that way and trust yourself in that way
Hmm.
when every single thing in the industry tells you to override,
Yes,
which just
yes,
drives more disconnection and more shitty stories about ourselves. Because why can't we do it?
yes. Why can't we do it? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Insane.
It's phenomenal. When you talk about those clients that come back, what do you see different about who they were when they arrived versus to who they are when they're coming back and they're like, okay, I'm ready? What shifts in them?
It's so funny because it's their energy for the most part. And there's characteristics, right, that come through too with that. But like when the energy they bring to calls, like they can show up, they can talk about things that they maybe did imperfectly or whatever. They're not crying before they even, like, I'm not like, hey, what are your wins? And then they're like crying before they, like, they can't even answer. So those, like, watching someone go from that place to being able to show up and like celebrate the smallest win. Like I
Yeah.
ate breakfast 3 out of the last 7 days. And
Yes.
like for some people, they'll be like, well, that person's not being disciplined, but you don't know where they came from and you don't know how much capacity they had to build in themselves to get to that point. And then
Yep.
it's like, sweet, let's get to 5. And to be able to see someone in that is one of the greatest gifts. And I think one of my like natural superpowers is being able to see the gap between the kind of like story version and the empowered, like authentic version of someone. It's like I can see who you're supposed to be and I can see the stories you're living in. And
Yeah.
so being able to walk them through that. So their emotional awareness, their self-awareness, and their ability to be confident in themselves and separate their confidence from their body. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Those are really big things that I notice when people will leave and come back, or they'll get the internal transformation and then they'll be like, all right, you taught me how to get the external one, but I'm really not even that worried about it. I'll keep doing the things you told me, but they came and they got that internal thing. And then I'm like, okay, well, I'm not worried about you anymore. Like I know that everything else you do, you'll be good. And I always, and my clients, I tell them all the time, I'm like, if you need something, you message me,
Yeah.
whether you're actively working with me or not.
Or
If you
not.
need,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so many people I come back or they reach out and ask for a piece of advice randomly. They'll share wins. My clients, like I had someone this morning, it's actually a shared friend of ours, send a picture, a progress picture. And she's like, you told me it wouldn't happen overnight, but I seriously feel like it did. And just seeing that picture, I'm like, holy, she looks amazing.
It's mind blowing, right? It's so
Yeah. And
mind
I just,
blowing.
yeah. So it's like, I've played with my program and my coaching so many times and I've done it so many different ways, but when I try to take out the self stuff, because it's a lot to build someone's self-awareness and their stories, their self-talk. and their nutrition habits and their workout habits. It's
Yes.
a lot.
Yes.
When I remove the self, the results mimic every other program
Yes.
that's out there.
Yeah.
And I can't do it. So I've tested it. It's not the
Hmm.
same. It doesn't
I,
do the same thing.
I want to bring a little humanity to you too. Okay. So and I don't know if this is going to be a hard question, but it came up while you were talking is, um, when those clients, okay, in the beginning, when you started doing this work and you're bringing your full self, you're bringing that mindfulness and, let's break down the story and rebuild. And people are complete and then leaving. What runs through your mind and what do you make up about yourself if people do leave
Oh,
before they came back?
so I was fortunate enough to have a very, very amazing guide during this time when I was building my coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And um, I learned a lot of skills from him. I learned like what I was doing because I had been doing the work for a while with
Mm-hmm.
clients, but I didn't
Mm-hmm.
understand what I was doing. So I learned oh, this is what I'm doing. I learned it from him. And kind of like I guess my coaching process, like what I was actually doing as far
Mm-hmm.
as transformation. So during that coaching container, um, we would have a lot of conversations around being a leader, being embodied in your work, being grounded,
Mm-hmm.
and trusting that everyone's journey is different. And it's my responsibility to show up and lead and guide. And if someone needs to leave, knowing that the universe has them and they have to go and they can come back. And that piece was huge for me because the trust I had in myself and in the big picture process for me to not have any attachment to my client. I gave them what they needed and as much as I could give them at that time. And I was able to be really grounded in my conversations with them and tell them, like, if you need to go, because this particular client that I'm thinking of that did this went and did like some Reiki stuff and went and did like, she went and took her money and she kept working on herself. And so, like, it was that open dynamic. So, my biggest story around my coaching wasn't about people leaving my world and coming back or leaving at all.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest story, I think, around my coaching, what I made it mean about me was I would just keep asking myself, like, why do I feel like I need to do it like this? Like, who am I? Why
Mm-hmm.
why am I doing this? Like
Mm-hmm.
no other fitness coach that I know coaches the way that I coach. And so like why just and that I would get wrapped up in that. And I know not to ask that question. Like,
Why? Why do you know not to ask that question?
well, because in I mean, our brains are negatively wired, so you're going to get a negative answer unless you like write it out, reframe it, and rewire it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that question would just mull around in there, and for a while, I would be like, "Why not me? Like, who else is going to do it? Why not me? Like, why wouldn't you?" Um, but I think for a long time, when I was coaching, I would just people would ask questions. I was like, "But why is that the question? Why don't you ask a different question, you're going to get a way better answer. Like, why are you asking yourself demeaning questions? Stop it." You know what I mean? They're like, well,
Yeah.
why did I do this? And why did I do that? I was like, well, like, what'd you learn? And why don't you ask a different fucking question?
Yeah.
So I think I just made up a lot of, and I still do this. I still,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't have anyone in my industry that I know of that is doing what I'm doing. So a lot of the times
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm like pioneering this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to create like coaching frameworks and processes and like um and when really like my best work comes from just an intuitive conversation that I'm having and I just coach
Right,
someone
true
through
with
it. I don't
yourself.
really
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
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 No, I think that's brilliant. I, because I look at why I'm like you ask a lot of why questions. I ask myself why all the time. But as I was thinking about this conversation today and rewiring ourselves and tapping into that self-awareness and why is it important? You know, what is it? What is that connection
Hmm.
between the inner awareness and the mechanics and the physicality of our body? What is it about those two that have to go hand in hand? Why?
Because the body is the subconscious mind. So
Hmm. Wait, I
if
just want everybody to stop and think about what she just said. Your body is your subconscious mind.
Mhm. Yeah. So
That's profound.
if you can feel that something's off, then there's a story somewhere in there.
Mhm.
And our body and our brain are in a constant feedback loop. And there's more feedback coming from the body to the brain than there is output from the brain going to the body. So so that means like if you're feeling something, you need to figure out what it is and if it's real or if it's a story. Is it from the past? Is it really in the present? Like there's so many things. And then there's all these crazy narratives in, especially within food and in the diet industry, the health industry, where it's like, well, don't eat this, don't do this, don't do that. This is going to ruin everything. Oh my gosh. So then like those stories get implanted into our brain. So then when we go do that thing, the the brain's like, oh, you weren't supposed to eat that. And then it will literally cause pain in the body that's not even really there because
Yeah,
this story is so deeply ingrained in the brain.
right.
So unwinding all of that and at the root of that too, like my favorite way to teach food is that it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like if you're not meeting your needs of like just eating, or if you're like you can't become self-actualized without meeting basic needs, but we view those basic needs through the lens of I'll be worthy when weight loss, I'll be worthy when achievement, and you can't self-actualize when you outsource that stuff. And so
Mhm.
until we can get rid of all these food narratives and self narratives, we can't fully self-actualize, and then we're always dealing with that like chasing empty feeling. At least that was my experience of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that empty feeling is no joke. It's very overwhelming and consuming
Yeah.
and almost bottomless. Like it just can keep going if you don't rein it in and
Hmm.
sort through it. Yeah. I think that's really powerful. The body is the subconscious mind. Like it
Hmm.
really is.
Well, you had that experience.
Yes.
Your story was this is protecting me.
Yes. It was protecting me.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's a story that's stored in the subconscious mind. And
Yes.
when you get
Yeah.
in there and you're like, whoa,
Yeah. And it's falling off.
yeah,
I don't need as much to protect me. I just need a little bit of skin and a little bit of, just the normal size.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't need all that extra stuff. Yeah, it's a powerful experience. And now, I think they're also just as a regular human being who works out the way I work out and doing what I'm doing. I think there's just a time when all of a sudden your body kicks in and then it just requires it. It just requires it. And if you
Mhm.
don't do it, then it doesn't feel good if you don't do it. And it only feels better when you are doing it. And I'm going to say this too, for all those ladies out there listening. The, uh, I don't think I've told you this. I just started realizing it. I'm like, my breasts are perkier. I'm like, and my skin is starting to look younger, So that human, what is it called? The human growth hormone thing. Like,
Yeah.
eh, I, it's so odd to me because I was, TMI, but I was looking at my breasts and I was like, what the hell? Like, oh my God, they feel different. Like everything feels different. My skin is firming up. And I remember you saying this is something I was talking to somebody yesterday who also is in health and fitness. We were talking yesterday, and I said, so many people tell you it's going to happen really quick, or they don't tell you anything. They just say, do this program or eat this food. I remember when you and I spoke, you looked at my body. I think we were at a friend's house at a birthday party. You looked at my body and you said, and you said, like, hate to break it to you. You said it like that. It's going to take you a minimum of 12 months. And I remember thinking, that's so fucking long. And you're like, I know, but that's just what it's going to take. And I remember thinking, that's so long. And now, I show you those pictures of 6 months and I'm like, what? I can't believe what I look like. and, and I was sharing with this person yesterday that that's where a lot of people make the mistake. They don't tell you the truth of how long it's going to really take.
No.
And those of us in our mind, because we live in this, quick gratification world called America,
Mm-hmm.
Western society, we think that, oh, I'm going to do this in like a month. I'm going to be ready for the dress in a month, or I'm going to be ready for the bikini in a month, and I'm going to be ready in a month, and a month, or 60 days or 90 days. And it's like, it's going to take you a while, because first you have to break down that wiring inside to where
Mm-hmm.
you're actually doing all the things needed, like the food, the exercise, the sleep, whatever it is that your body needs to get even back in that normal functioning routine. It
Mm-hmm.
takes all of that to, before then the body, let me say, how do I say it? Before the body catches up with what's in the subconscious.
Yes. Reality is always catching up. And when people
Yeah.
get patient, they divert before
Hmm.
reality catches up. And it's
Yeah.
like, no, it was working. It was working
It
and you
was
stopped.
working. Yeah. And I remember I wanted to forego photos too. I was like, I'm not doing photos. Photos suck. I don't want to look at
Oh, yeah,
myself.
they are
And
hard. They're
you
hard.
said, yeah. And you were like, you have to so you can see your progress. And I was like, I don't want to do it, and I'm so glad I did it. And I remember even begrudgingly taking those first pictures, just like,
You can
oh,
see it all over your face.
I know. I'm just like, I'm just gonna take it because she's gonna keep bugging me about it. So I was like, just do it, Tara. But it was so hard. And now, like those last photos, I was like, I'm gonna take my pictures. I'll see. I'm gonna go out in the garage where I have like a white background. Forget the bathroom. Like, I'm gonna get my tripod. I was like all into it.
Yes. Yes. Like,
Look at me. Yeah, I'm doing it. But it's so funny, right? And I think when people really commit to themselves, and sometimes, like we talked about my coming to Jesus day, where I had to really commit to myself. And but I had to first, have my coming to Jesus conversation of, I'm not committing to myself. Like even yesterday, I was logging my food and I had everything going good, tried to get that extra protein and that extra fat, and then womp, messed up my calories. And I was like, Jesus. So then I'm in there like playing around. Well, what if I only ate, but did I? I mean, that's how neurotic I am right now. And I shouldn't say it's a neurosis, y'all. It's just that I'm really trying to figure out how to master my food. And
yes.
it's a game for me. It's fun for me. And so then I'm like playing around and I'm thinking about foods. Well, which foods? And I was like, okay, looking at labels. And I know people are probably like, I'm not going to do that much work. But you do when you start to realize how your
Yep.
body feels, how your body looks, and what you mentally are committed to. And
It's
that's why I do
different.
it. Yeah,
It's
it's not,
different. It's not the same as 1,200 calories and that it's so different because it's like the gas gauge on your car.
yeah,
Like you're gonna expect to drive across the country, but you got like a quarter tank of gas. It's like you
it's
gotta
not
know you
happening.
gotta
Yeah,
fill it up and you gotta fill it up like 7 more times. Like
yeah.
you can't just,
Hit this drive.
like yeah, you can't just willy-nilly. And
Like our
it's like
kids, hey mom, just break out the card. You've got the card. You could just pay for it with the card. It's like, yeah, but there's money on that card. And where do you think the money comes from? And how do you think it gets into the bank? And oh, by the way, it's not even real money. It's just a digital number, but still, it's got to be filled before you just use the card.
that is actually like a really good way to put it because it just for so many people it's like elusive. They don't understand.
Yes.
But it's like when you have the right mindset and you connect it to yourself and you've claimed your worth and put it all in there together and it's like oh, this is how I build myself. I feed myself.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
and this is how much of each thing I need.
Yes.
Whoa, like no one ever
Yes.
told me what I need, and I
No.
didn't know. And
No.
like that still, that like meeting needs is just still just, it's such a big part of all of this because we're so disconnected from what are our needs and how to meet them and how to ask for support and communicate them and all of that. And so like
Mhm.
when you really get in there and you start realizing like how long this has been a gap and what it's done to you,
Yes.
oh
Yes.
man, like it just
Yes.
it almost killed me. It damn near killed me. So
Yes.
yeah, when you come at it from like an empowering standpoint like that, it changes tracking food. It changes it
It
a lot
does. It
and
does.
allows it to be a game and fun and
And
empowering
it's fun.
and
Yeah, because for me, it really is figuring out, and when we recognize, oh, well, I'm eating less meat now, so now I'm not meeting my protein thing, so what I have to do to shift and change that, it's really me just figuring out, now granted, we went to Typhoon, Texas yesterday, and they don't allow you to bring any food in. And so, I overate too many carbs. Well, I actually didn't, but then when I came home to get everything else done, like on my food tracker, that's when it got
Mhm.
catawampus because all they have there is pizza and pretzels and
Yeah, so now you're trying to close the gap without any carbs.
yeah, yeah. So then, but I made a great dinner. I cooked up some venison and ground venison and some rice. And I was like, okay, I got my cup of rice, got my, I don't know, four
That
and a
sounds
half,
good.
whatever. And then I ate some carrots. So I was like, good. Then I was like, damn it, I'm still short of my protein and my fat. And my carbs and my calories were right on. I was like, yellow, blue, yellow, blue. I was like, oh. And so then I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, so look at the pepperoni thing. I was like, okay, oh, yeah, 15 pieces of pepperoni. So almost halfway through my pepperoni, because that's going to match everything. And then all of a sudden my calories like, and I'm like, no. So then I like half of it back. It's like this game.
Oh,
It's like
yes.
shit. And then it was still all messed up. I was like, damn it. I just,
But
so
it,
it,
right there, it's like it's your awareness, it's your dedication to
yeah,
it, it's your in your lack.
it's my commitment to self.
Well,
It's
and
my
you're like,
commitment to Tara.
yeah, and you're like laughing about the fact that you didn't hit it, and
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
it. Like
Yeah.
you will be successful because of that energy
Yeah.
shift. Like, oh, it's beautiful. I love it.
It's classic, right? And I just I wish that for everyone that struggles with weight loss and that struggles with committing to themselves is that what I wish for y'all. I guess just that you find that peace within yourself that stops you from really committing to yourself.
Hmm.
And that's different for everybody. And I know that doesn't like what does that really mean, Tara? What do you mean? But I mean there is something within that stops people from truly believing in who they are and the goals they want to achieve.
Hmm. Do you, where do you see the, because there's clearly a gap in the advice that's given in the nutrition industry or diet industry.
Hmm.
But there's another really big gap, and it's that self-awareness and like self-worth
Hmm.
piece.
Hmm.
And this is something that I've like, it's insane how much like research and work I've done on this, but like when you try to decipher which one's more important, to me, I can't come to the conclusion of which thing is more important. I feel like they're equally important.
Hmm.
But from your perspective, like, is that how you perceive it? That the self and the nutrition are that the gap is equal.
I believe the gap is equal when you say it like that because you can't have one without the other. I really
Hmm.
believe that. I really believe that it was like when we talked about when I was like, oh, well, when you drink the soft drink or you smoke the cigarette, like you're shitting on your inner world. You're shitting on your temple. I
Yeah.
think because this community and this society in which we live in, which now, okay, I'm gonna take a little side track here. This gal that pops up in my feed on Instagram, it talked about all the videos from the 70s and 60s and how everybody at the beach was skinny, and now you look at everybody at the beach and everybody's really overweight. I started just recognizing that just in life in general, like even
Yeah.
here in Texas, in Austin. Austin's a very healthy town. You go downtown, everybody's looking fit and fabulous. Everybody's outside getting sun, running, biking, kayaking. But really, when you really look around, I can't help but say she's absolutely right about that because and I was talking to somebody about this yesterday who's also in fitness, is that in the 70s and the 60s is really when all the preservatives and all the bullshit got put into our foods. Our food totally changed then, and our food is changing now. Everybody wake up, our food is changing now. Don't be eating that
Mhm.
rubber fruit. I've seen some out there. I've had a rubber avocado. I've seen it.
Mhm.
You got to really what, and now they're putting organic stickers over the appeal stickers. I mean,
Crazy.
it's insane. Our
Yeah.
food is changing again, and our food changed then. And I made a comment about that movie Wally. Like that really is the goal of big pharma and all those companies that they line all their pockets on the dishealth of people. And I'm sorry, I'm possibly going down a tangent, but I'm also going to say this. I work in the area of genetics where I go out and sell genetic testing. I don't know if any of you have been to a children's hospital lately, but you could go to a children's hospital at 8 a.m., 10 a.m., 2 p.m., 4 p.m. And you know how long it's going to take you to find a parking spot? It's going to take you at least an hour to find a parking spot. There's a
Mhm.
problem with that. The fact that in America, and by the way, they just built a brand new children's hospital here in
Yeah.
Austin, brand new because we didn't have one, we didn't have two, we now have a third. You got to ask why do we have all these children's hospitals? And when you go at any hour of the day, especially, gosh, when I'm in Houston and San Antonio, it breaks my heart. You can't find parking
Yeah.
because there's that many people sick, and they're
Great.
children. They're
Yeah.
children. So I just went, I diverted, I digress. Sorry, let me get back on track here.
Well,
But it's,
I
yeah,
have something to
yeah,
say about that too,
yes.
because so
And it's real. It's real. It's real.
it
And
is
it's in the
real.
food, and it's in the air that you breathe, it's in the food that you eat, it's in the products
Well,
that
and
we
it's
use.
it's in the generational stories that are passed down, like the dirty little black girl in the gutter.
Yes.
So like just
Yes.
think about, so there's the study of like the stories in the mind and the way that those stories impact, because the brain, there's the gut brain axis, right? And so there's
Yes.
those negative stories and any like negative emotion, like guilt, shame, judgment, unworthiness, all of that, right? There's the study of this
Mm-hmm.
like connection and how those stories create low level inflammation in the brain. They cause the gut microbiome to be disrupted because there's
Mm-hmm.
inflammation in the body. And then when you go and attempt to change how you're feeling or your health or whatever, and you do it through the lens of all these things without looking internally, then when you fail, you make it, it basically validates that story that you suck and that you're
Yep.
always going to be this
Justifies it.
way,
Mm-hmm.
which just creates more inflammation in the body
More of
on
it.
top of
It's
the
amazing.
inflammation that is being created from the food. So you've got this really crazy compounding negative effect on humans. And it's like there was a visual of this, and it was like four jars next to each other, and there was like muddy water in the first jar. So you're thinking of this as like your great grandma.
Mm-hmm.
And so they pour the jar into her daughter, who then pours the jar into her daughter until someone stops the cycle. I'm going to
Yes.
cry.
Yeah.
And the clear water comes in and they just dump it into the mud, and you just dump it in, dump it in, dump it in until it turns clear and all the mud's gone. And then she dumps that into her kids.
Yes.
That's the depth of what we're talking about,
Yes.
because it's not just the food.
No. You're
If you
breaking
don't fix,
lineages and patterns.
if you don't
that
fix
were
the stories, the
passed down
body,
by dead people. They're dead. Yeah, they don't matter anymore, but we still live inside of their conversations as if they're real.
and like basically self-limiting beliefs of
Yes,
like, I'm the woman,
100%.
so these are my roles, and I absorb all the negative. I'm the emotional, basically sponge.
Hmm.
I'm everyone's emotional support, but I have nowhere for my own emotions to go.
Yes,
I don't have any awareness of what my needs are. So
yes,
now not only do I have my own stories in my head about myself and how I'm not meeting expectations, but also I'm
yeah,
absorbing and trying to be the emotional bandwidth in my home. And
yeah,
I'm trying to hold a career.
yeah.
And I'm trying to look good and be healthy and have energy and all of that. And so
Have energy.
the
Yeah.
intention is rooted in such a pure, we can do that. We have the
Yes.
capacity to do, women are so fucking powerful. But when you don't have the tools to be her,
Hmm.
that disconnect between who you know you can be
Hmm.
and who you're being is like,
Hmm.
that right there is enough to kill somebody.
Oh, yeah.
It
Oh,
is
yeah.
awful.
Well, it kills people every day.
Every day,
Every day.
every day. The
Every day.
body literally, like those trapped emotions, yeah, the body attacks itself. And
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
and that was, and I experienced that, and no one could fix me. And here's your pills.
Yeah.
And it's,
Yeah.
I have, yeah, I have
Yeah.
so much freedom now because I don't live in that anymore. But it was
Yes.
identifying all these beliefs and all these stories and all these gaps. And then just, I think a lot of it too, in a very crazy way, which, but I used my kids for inspiration to heal because I could see, you can see how raw they are.
Hmm.
And I was like, well, if they can cry 1 second and then be laughing with tears still on their cheeks, maybe that's normal. And I'm not,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
no one has done anything to them yet.
Hmm.
So that's normal. And I'm not. And so I just used them as my role models. And
Hmm.
that, along with my entrepreneurship journey, because you gotta have some insane emotional intelligence if you're gonna succeed at that. So between my kids and my businesses, that is, I just took everything and I was like looking for, because there was no adult role model, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Character traits were there. My parents are freaking amazing.
Yes.
So it's not necessarily, that's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying like that authenticity and the
Yes.
emotional fluidity and
Yes.
the bandwidth and all of that, like that's more what I'm kind of talking about. So
Yeah.
that was kind of how I like intuitively like wove my way through my healing. And it
Yeah.
was so dope now looking back, because I'm just like, I held myself to a very high standard, but I let go of the expectations of it being perfect.
Mm.
My vision for myself and my standard was up here,
Hmm.
but I knew that how I got there didn't matter. And I
Hmm.
had to quit making things mean things.
Hmm.
And so I just let it be messy.
Hmm.
And the more I let go of that, like it was insane what came of it.
Because life is messy.
Yeah. But it's so hard to not make it mean something about you.
Right. And we live like it can't be messy. It just is messy.
Yeah.
It's just messy.
I want
Anybody
to
who says
know,
it needs to be like so, regimen, like I mean, yes, you can have your neatness, but shit's messy.
it is
And that's
messy.
okay. But
Yeah.
what do you want to know?
I want to know, when did you, so you like did your 40 years in the desert. I want to know when you, I want to
For
know when
real,
you,
girl. It was
yeah,
2 years, but shit. Yes.
it felt like
Go ahead.
40. I want to know, when did you kind of like start to come out of that? Did you have like an epiphany? Did you
I
like
did. It's a beautiful
learn
moment.
something about self-worth and then you were like, oh, I just decide? Like what is like, I want to talk a little bit about that like worthiness aspect and just like that epiphany of you coming out of
Yeah,
there.
that's a great question. So I have I have a big inner self that has gotten me out of some serious jams over the years. It's just like I remember I had an awakening at 25 where I woke up in a dead sweat of, sweat in my bed, and I heard this voice, "Are you done yet?" And I was like, "What?" You know? And at that time I was drinking and drugging and partying like a rock star, and and not making all the best choices. And I just heard it. And then I heard it again really loud. Are you done yet? It was like this awakening. So I've always had this higher self of mine has had to give me like swift kicks in the ass every now and then. And at that time in the desert, how old was I? I was 37. I was 37. And the moment I moved there, I was running. I was running from my problems, and I was using a relationship to run. Um, I wouldn't have admitted that then, but I was really struggling with my self worth. I was really struggling with what people will think of me because I was totally built on a false foundation of what people thought of me. What did I think of me? That would be the better question. What did I think of me? I thought
That
shit of
breakthrough,
myself.
that
Yeah.
breakthrough is like huge.
I
That's
thought
one of my
shit
favorite
of
ones.
myself. Yeah. So I will say this. So I'm in the desert with the cowboy, and he had been drinking that night, and he rolled up on his quad, and I'm standing there looking out the kitchen window, and he's like, "You fucking whore." And I
Oh,
was like, he just called me a whore. And I heard the voice, and it said, "Well, Tara, you got yourself into this mess, and now
mhm.
you will have to get yourself out of this mess. And you cannot have anybody rescue you. It's up to you." Like, I can't call mom. And I had a dear friend who was actually an ex-lover. And I don't know how we connected. And he is like, "I will get a truck right now and I will come pick your ass up." And I was like, "Nope, I got to get myself out of this mess," which I should
Oh,
have had him pick me up.
yeah.
It was a long struggle getting off that ranch. But so there I was on the ranch in this relationship. And what had happened was it just got worse and worse and worse. And I could see it. And thank God I had tools. I had lots of tools at that time. And I was very spiritually connected at that time. But I remember what I had done is I had built a labyrinth, one of those walking labyrinth deals out in the back in the desert because we were out in the middle of beautiful desert. And there was this barn cat named George, and he was a big, scrawny, skinny tabby, just like a total regal barn cat, which the cowboy killed. And I just, the whole nother conversation, asshole. But there I was sitting in the middle of my labyrinth, and the sun was setting. It was gorgeous. And, we lived out in the northwest corner of Arizona. So the skies were just vast and amazing. And the sun was setting, and there was the smell of greasewoods because we had just had rain. And so there were like out there when it rains, the termites and the flying ants that kind of will fly around. So they're kind of in the sky. I can smell the greasewoods. George is sitting right next to me. We're both just enjoying the sunset. And as I'm sitting there, a bat comes and like eats all the gnats that are flying around and is literally so close to me, like within inches around me. And I was like, oh, and then right after that, this tarantula killer. I don't know if you know what those are. They're those big, they're like a wasp, but they're not wasps. They have really long legs and they have really big wings, and they land on the backs of tarantulas, and then they'll kill them, right? So one of those comes flying up, and it kind of flies up in slow motion, like, and I could hear it because we're out in the middle of nowhere. There's no sound. And I hear this and it's just flying by. So the bat comes up, cleans the gnats, the tarantula killer flies by, and the next thing you know, a flock of doves just come bursting out of the greasewoods like 50 yards ahead and start, making the dove sound. And in that moment, I was like, oh my God, I just burst into tears because I was like, God just spoke to me and said, it
Mhm.
is time. Like, and that's when I was like, 40 years in the desert. Like having my Moses moment, like, get your shit together, girl. you Totally. It was like that. It was like, oh, and I was like, oh my God. And I just remember at that time, I was like, all right. And I reached out to a mutual friend of the cowboy because they had been in AA for years. I called them up and I was like, I need to go to Al Anon. I need to get in a meeting. And I took the very steps at that point to start rebuilding my life. But that was 2 years after the loss of my house, 2 years after that awakening of the dirty black girl in the gutter. And I just started taking the steps to, rebuild my self worth. But even then, I landed right back into a better but still similar situation with my
Mhm.
ex-husband. And, it took years to constantly have to rewire, but also discover all the neural pathways that were built in from my childhood of
Mhm.
the lack of who I was, right? Like you're
Mhm.
not enough, you're an idiot, you're stupid, you're ugly, you look like a monkey. Like these are things that were said to me as a child. What are you,
Oh.
stupid? And sometimes I hear that tone come out of my mouth. Like I don't say those words to my child, but the tone comes out. And the tone
Mhm.
does just as much damage as the words, you know?
I know.
And it's that constant, I don't know if I'm answering the question, but it is the constant discovery of what was that conversation? Oh my God.
Mhm.
Like I just discovered one that I, shared on my podcast recently about the whole daddy issue. I was like, whoa, I had no idea that I had made up that I was forgotten. I'm forgettable. And so,
Oh,
a
you
mutual
are
friend,
unforgettable.
totally, a mutual friend of yours and mine, we love her. Uh, we when I discovered like that I made up that I was forgettable, like boom, the universe showed me instantly 2 days later how unforgettable I was. I was like, damn, I'm so unforgettable, but it's that stuff that runs in the background and you don't even know it. And that's why I say life's happening for you, because life will keep showing all the conversations that are running in the background.
But when you validate the old story instead of seeing the new one,
Yeah.
it's like the story of the woman who's like, you know what? She's trying to manifest a new relationship with someone, like a healthy relationship.
Hmm.
And she goes into the coffee shop and this guy holds the door for her and she's standing in line and he starts to talk with her and she kind of has this like the nudge, the higher self is like, no, nope. But
No.
he offers his number and she takes it. And then they sit there and they chit chat. Well, she was supposed to say no to him, and the guy that the universe had queued up for her was on the corner at the stoplight, but she missed him because she was talking to the Joker that
Yes.
had the same tendencies that she was supposed to be saying no to. So she
Yes.
didn't see because we get fixated, we keep recreating the same thing.
Yes, we're
And I
not
think
listening.
this in relationships we do it with money, and we do it with our
Everything.
body. We keep
Yes.
losing the weight and gaining it instead of because we keep going for the quick fix. We keep
Yes.
going for the next thing that gets tossed
Yes.
in front of us instead of recognizing like that's the same thing that I just said I didn't want. I want the
Mhm.
outcome. Like it's so crazy, but we'll validate and we'll keep recreating until we can get above it and see and
But
witness.
that was all I had. That's all that was there. And it's like,
Yep.
no, you had other
All you needed
choices.
to do was take 5 more steps. Like
Yes.
set a
Yes.
boundary, say no, and take 5 steps to the right. It's right
Yes. Yes.
there.
Yes.
Oh man,
Yeah,
it's
it's
wild.
it's wild. I mean, it is amazing because it really is that. And I always tell my son, your whole existence here is just to master choice.
Yeah.
At every
Yep.
second, your brain is saying, do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? And it's just mastering choice. And every second, your higher self is telling you, do this, do that, do this, do that. And we're like,
The whisper.
tomorrow, tomorrow, not right now. Oh, they won't want me to. I'm not going to do that. And that's like, it's the same thing. And people will say, oh, well, how is it that you can hear? And how it's like, I just started listening and I just
It's
started following what it told me to do.
it's
And
stopping. Yeah.
mhm,
It's just
mhm,
stopping. That I
mhm.
mean, this is a big thing. So the actual process of it, of learning to hear yourself, is instead of going to ask. I was walking someone through this the other day. Instead of going to ask for other people's opinions on what you should do or call somebody or talk it out, like just record yourself. If you're a verbal processor, just record yourself. Like record a video of yourself, record it into a voice note, write it down, whatever way that you typically process. But so many people who operate from kind of the not self, they're
Mhm.
looking for other people to tell them or validate them instead of learning that they need to learn how to hear and validate themselves. So if you like to talk it out to figure out what the heck's actually going on, then
Yes.
shooting a video, writing it down, taking it on a walk, take it to a workout, like go get into your body, because your body is your subconscious mind, and your subconscious mind is where your authenticity lives.
Yes.
It's just, it's buried in all this bullshit. So it's like you got
Yes.
to learn. And so it's just like stopping yourself in that pattern
Yep.
and listening and
Yep.
asking a good question.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And
I say play a game. Play a game. Even
yeah.
if just for a day, I would say do it for 5 days. But everything that whisper says, do it. Even
Mhm.
if it says turn right down that street when you're supposed to go straight, just turn right.
Yeah.
Do it. Just that was right. But just turn right. Turn right. Like just do it. Do it.
That is so, it's so true. Just
Mhm.
like getting into that. I like to go get into my like 5-year-old self and just like go do stuff that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
go
just
play,
listen to the voice.
go,
It will tell you. Yeah, it'll
yeah.
tell you to do all kinds of weird shit. And then the great thing is there's some miracle on the other side.
It's a good practice of like letting go of like, I have to do it all perfectly right now because you're playing a game
And I
and
don't have
it's,
time.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't have time. You have plenty of time. So much time.
So much time.
So much time.
Yeah.
I know I get sucked into the time conversation.
I mean, and it's true because it's the world we live in,
Yeah.
but you can't submit to it. You still
No.
have to assert what you know. You know what I mean? Like, yeah,
Hmm.
we're all busy. It is not fun. If I could go live on a farm if I could go to that ranch you were on and we could all somehow
Oh
live,
my God. It is
I would love
beautiful.
that. I would
It
love
is
to live a
beautiful.
slow, peaceful life, but it took me a long time to even get to a place where I valued that enough to say that because I
Hmm.
was taught growing up
Yeah.
that there is no value in peace and rest and um yeah, that's so
I
self.
I find too that when you value that, when you give yourself the space for that, the very things that you want actually come faster and more. That's
When
what
you
I'm starting to learn is when you take that time out for yourself and say, "No, you know what? No, I'm taking time out."
and
And then everything flows.
the juiciest insights come in that space. Like
Yes. 100%.
you think it
100%.
doesn't matter if you work out or not, but guess what? Something awesome is gonna plop into your brain. Like you think it doesn't matter if you go for a walk.
Yeah.
Something amazing, a
Yep.
story, an old story, like pops up, and you're like, "Whoa!" Like
Yes.
it's
Yes.
this space. We had a coaching call around this, and you were like, it's not the walk, it's like the meditative state that is the walk. And then I was
Yes.
like,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It feels so good, It feels so good. I feel that too when I work out, you
Hmm.
know? I mean, it's this feeling that occurs and yeah, I don't know. It just yeah, it's all good. It's all good
What's
stuff.
your process for rewiring, like your self-worth and just your narratives? And
It's funny.
you
I
said a
Yeah, it's a
couple.
great question. I do a lot of writing and rewriting. I do manifesting writing, but another thing I recently started doing, which I used to do a long time ago, is I don't know if you've ever heard of flow dreams. Are you familiar with flow dreams? Summer
Mm-mm.
McStravick. They're these little audios, and
Yeah.
I'll go on walks and listen to flow dreams, or I will every night. It's either my mentor stuff that I listen to or flow dreams every night. And actually, the flow dreams, she has this whole one on weight loss. And
Oh,
I started listening to it while I was sleeping. Like it plays all night, all night, all night. And whether or not that contributed to the shift that occurred in the last month or two, I don't know. But I listen to the ones on relationships. I listen to the ones on career. I listen to the ones on weight loss. I listen to the ones on heavenly, whatever, miracles, whatever. And I just let those run all night long. That's just what I do because in my sleeping state is where my
mm-hmm.
subconscious is most heavily wired. And, granted, we've got stuff, coming in all the time through media. I'm also
It can feel
mindful about what I
stressful.
watch. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm mindful about what I watch. I also know from my certifications in hypnotherapy, I also know when certain things are playing, how they're trying to hypnotize us and how they're subliminally pouring in a conversation. So I'll shut that off if I see, oh, they're turn it off. Like, I'm not doing that. Or I won't watch the thing they want me to watch while they're saying what they're saying, because that watching causes the brain to shut down so that what they're saying goes into the subconscious. So,
Mhm.
but I do practice rewiring. If I hear a conversation, and I'm also mindful, I try to be mindful. I'll say try. No, I'll say I'm mindful. I'm mindful about what comes out of my mouth. And if I catch something that comes out of my mouth, I'll be like, "Ooh, wow, I just said that. Wow." And I'll reword it. And then I'll
Mhm.
try and stop it if it comes again. Like, I'll catch when it's coming out. Like, "Oh,
Mhm.
I just said it again. That must be
Mhm.
some conversation I have." Especially conversations around money, you know,
Mhm.
finances, building
Mhm.
wealth. Like right now I'm listening to a building wealth one while I sleep.
Nice.
So that's one of the tools I do.
Mm.
Hypnotherapy is a great tool. I haven't done a hypnotherapy session in a while, but I really find that that's a great time to rewire. I also just think rewiring in meditation. I also do a lot of mirror work. And then every night before I go to bed, I tell myself, "Thank you, God, and I love you." Like, "I love you, Tara." I tell the Tara that I love her all the time.
How
So
long did it take you to be able to do that?
authentically do it, probably 50 years.
I want to hear, I want
Because
to
I've,
hear,
mhm,
um, for a long time, I did not teach. I still don't think I teach this, coach this affirmations because I I would invert the process. And so instead of having people say I love you and not mean it because they've been lied to before
yep,
many times, I
yep,
would just tell them just say something nice about yourself that you actually feel like is true, or go to a workout, get into that state,
right,
then go do mirror work, then go write your affirmations,
yep,
or or look at the difference between writing your thoughts down prior to a workout and then after, and
yes,
look at the power of your body, look at the power that's there.
yeah,
So I'm curious of your perspective, because I would teach like mantras, like if you get into a state you actually did feel like something was true, then you know that it is true somewhere inside of you.
right,
Then it's easier for you to access that. It's an anchor, right? So then
right.
if you're feeling disempowered, you can access that mantra as an anchor versus just like these like blanket statement affirmations that everyone's just
Mhm,
like, you are worthy, you are loved, I love myself, but they don't actually feel it. So I
mhm.
just want to hear like your take on that, because that was my experience. I hated affirmations. They were very, and I think part of it was like where I was. I didn't like self-love. I thought it was stupid.
I think, to your point, I mean, like I said, you said how long it took me 50 years to authentically. I'm 53. I would say in the last 3 years, I authentically, when I say an affirmation, I actually believe it. But
Mhm.
it took years. And I think that, you know, did you ever did you ever have that book? What's her name? Oh God, what is it? The Artist's Way.
Oh, nope.
It's a good one. It's an old one, good one. She has, she's a recovering alcoholic, I believe, and I forget her name, but the book is called The Artist's Way. And it's really good. And she teaches, and I got this way back in my late 20s, early 30s. She teaches morning pages. So when you first wake up, have your journal and just start writing, and lo and behold, the shit that comes out is not happy. It's like you just write whatever's there, and 9 times out of 10 it's really negative, and you have to do a minimum of 3 full pages, and then the flow of positivity can come and you can create your day. But the
Oh.
idea is, you first want to download all the bullshit that just came out of your subconscious, because while you were sleeping, all that stuff comes up. Sorry, I have frogs in my throat today. Um, all that stuff comes up. And so, because usually when we wake up in the morning, we wake up with, we're not waking up going, "Oh my God, the sun is shining, life is good." We're not waking up
No.
like that. Typically, we're like, "Oh, it's
But we
Monday."
want to wake up like that.
Yes. So exactly. So she would say, you roll out of bed and you just start writing. You just start writing. Don't even put your feet on the floor. Just write out, scribble out those 3 pages. And
Dude.
then you can create, because by the end of the 3 pages you're starting to now talk about some positive things, and you just get all the shit out of the way. So I feel that that practice was helpful. I also think to any tool, it takes practice, like a workout. To fitness is a work, if fitness is a practice, it eventually becomes a lifestyle and a habit, and or a habit and then a lifestyle. It is the same thing with affirmations. It is the same thing with self-development. Here I'm 53. I now don't do the 3 pages of bull loney. I will wake up and just start creating my life and just write all
Mm-hmm.
these beautiful, amazing things, to where all of a sudden my body has that feeling of like, oh, yes, this is what I'm creating. This is so
Yes.
exciting. Like, I'll just write stuff, I make it up. It's nothing that I'll just make up. Like, how do I want my life to look? And start
Yeah.
living into this future that we're creating.
Yeah.
So that and then I created quite a bit a few months ago that I realized, uh-oh, I've now said that I'm going to trail off of that conversation, but I
Mhm.
know it's going to happen. That all of what I've written is going to come, because it's in the
What
energetic.
will you do? Will you say no to the guy in the coffee shop and go to the corner?
don't know. I don't know, because it is about a guy, actually.
Oh,
But I don't know that he's the right guy that I was really writing about. And I realized, oh wow, I have to take maybe the individual of him out and let the space be the guy, right?
yes, that.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
That was
yeah,
a
but
game. That's a game changer. That reframe changed my
yes.
whole life.
Yes.
Like the because when we get too specific, it doesn't work because then we miss it. But when you're
Hmm.
creating, when you're general and you create a space,
Yes. Yes.
like, and that's why I kind of hate. I write amazing recipes and I have these great meal plans and my workouts are the bomb. But even for you, like it took you all this time to get to that. And that's why I hate that stuff, even though I'm really good at it and it's amazing. But
Hmm.
it's like, I love the coaching aspect of just creating the space for people
You hold the space and hold
to
the container for them to be.
to do it and that
Yes.
themselves. And then I'm like,
Yes.
oh, well, you're testing now. So now here's
Yes.
a recipe because they're
Yes.
ready, they're open. So I
Yes.
love that. I'm
Yeah,
just
because
gonna
you're
take this
holding
out.
space. Yeah, you're holding space for something. And that is, I did write all of that. And what I will say about that question, will I say yes or go to walk to the corner? I believe I'm in the process of walking to the corner at the moment, and I'm really allowing myself to be open. And there's a few people showing up, and I'm like, oh, and rather than saying, oh, it's this person, I'm just like, no, just kind of sit and hang tight and wait and let it show up. Let it show up
Mhm.
for you. And so it is. But in the meantime, you keep writing and creating, or you keep speaking and creating, or you keep affirming affirmations and creating. I do believe there is also kind of a fake it till you make it component to that, because in the beginning, when I would do affirmations, I'm like, this isn't working for me. But it was because there was still stuff underneath that had to come up, that
Or
as
it's like the I'm gonna see if this works energy.
yes, when
Instead
my
of
friends say, I'm gonna see if it works, I'm like, it isn't gonna
it's a
work.
skill.
It
It's a
isn't gonna work
skill.
when you give it, because if you're testing it, it's not gonna work. It's not about testing it. You just gotta do it, and you have to be it. And I feel too, um there's I just lost my train of thought, so it doesn't matter. But you can't test it. And here's the other thing: the universe gives you everything you ask for. It just doesn't look the way you think it's supposed to look, and you
Mhm.
can walk on and miss it. And they've given it to you multiple times. And that goes back to that whole piece of it's happening for you, y'all. It's happening for you. Pay attention. Pay attention.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Oh my
Oh, that's what I was gonna say, is that, even to this time in my health journey, you know, I don't think I could be doing what I'm doing and having the kinds of results that I'm having for myself, um, any sooner, because there were still so many conversations under there that had to be unearthed and healed. I authentically can look in the mirror and I authentically think that I know that I love myself. And I
Mhm.
authentically can look in the mirror and I see the beauty within myself. I
Mhm.
didn't see that forever. And then I have to authentically look at my body and see the beauty in it. As I told you, I hated it. I hated it
It's
6
been
months ago.
so cool to watch you do that.
Yeah, like
Like our first like 5 calls,
Mm-hmm.
I just let you spill it on how you actually felt about.
Mm-hmm.
And now, like when you're like you update your pictures without me even saying anything,
I know,
and you're
but
like,
look it.
like to watch that has just been like the freaking coolest thing I've ever done.
Yeah,
It's just
I
so
mean,
cool.
I'm
I
proud
think
of me. I'm proud. I'm proud of
the
Tara.
that's huge. And
Yeah.
to your point, like we do as humans look at everything because we live in this like 3D reality of like you do this and you get that out. And it's
Yep.
like
Yep.
we forget to look at things as a skill and see ourselves in our growth process. And so
Yes.
like manifesting works and it's a skill. And so when you first start doing it, you're gonna suck at it. You're gonna have doubts. You're gonna like it's
Yes.
gonna be messy. And
Yes.
then it's like the more you do it, I actually drew this and I did a little mini training in the group yesterday in the VIP on this yesterday, but it was like the picture is 3 lines and it's basically the mastery of the fitness. And when you start, you're building the skill, but you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to master fitness, your food, and yourself. And so I drew it like this because in the beginning, you're new, and so there's a lot of doubts and about your abilities and if it's going to work and all that crap. And then like you move into like intermediate where it's like, oh, you've started to realize like it's not if it's going to work, it's how do I make this work? How do
Yes.
how do I do this? How do I do it in
Yes.
this situation? How do I do it in this
Yes.
situation? When you move into that thought process, you're on your way to mastery now because it's like, okay, so what is my form supposed to look like? How does that impact my results? What's my plate supposed to look like? What's my plate look like when I'm out to eat, when I'm up north camping, when I'm doing this? And then in the self, it's the questions you're asking, the things you're saying, the frame you're seeing it through, and like this whole conversation about rewiring. And so when you are in all of that, and that's why the journey is so long because it's
Mm,
not just I do this, I get this out.
no.
And if you're missing one of these lines, that's why the fat finds you again
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
there's something
There's
you did.
no get rich quick, y'all. There's no get
No,
rich. And if you got rich quick, you lose it just as fast.
but I think the coolest thing about this entire conversation is that the worthiness and the love for
Yes.
yourself and the
Yes.
respect for yourself, the self-concept, the sense of who you are
Yeah.
comes from the it comes from the journey of mastery. And
Yes.
so I truly believe, and I think I've had a hard time standing in this in my coaching practice until recently, because no one else teaches it this way that I know. I'm sure there are people, but I truly believe that at the heart of a body transformation done holistically, done well, will lead you to your most embodied and authentic self.
Oh, sure.
And when
Because
when
that's
that
when
part
you're standing in your truth. You're living in your truth.
and when you try to skip it or leave it out, you get the yo-yo, right? That's what you get.
You get the yo-yo because life's happening for you because you missed a piece.
You missed it. You missed the
Yep.
guy on the corner.
Yes. And that's internal, you know? And that's yeah, yes. I had a mentor years ago, spiritual mentor who I would go to frequently. And I was in a multitude. I mentioned this in my last podcast. I've had a string of abusive, failed relationships. And that was all because of my childhood and my upbringing and how abusive it was. But I remember her saying that if you choose to stay this time around when you know how bad it is,
Mhm.
she said, I want you to imagine it, Tara. It's like the waves crashing on a shore, gently ebbing away at the sand, breaking it down a little bit at a time. And she goes, and I also want you to see it as like that was how this person was. This person was like ebbing and chipping away at my self worth, chipping away at my self worth. Every time the wave went out, every time it came back in, it would take more of me. And she's like, and I want you to see this situation as like a revolving door. And let's just say the revolving door took a year to come around. And now the opening is there and I can choose to get off and step off. I can step off that bus. If I miss that window, and I choose to stay on, that revolving door is going to take another 10 years before the opening comes. And
Gosh,
that's
I
what
have
I
chills
mean.
all over my body
Yeah,
because people
that's
don't understand that.
no. And that's why I talk about my 40 years in the desert. When I made the choice to walk away with this man and leave my community was like, what the fuck are you doing? And I was running from my internal self that I couldn't be with. And the moment I got out there and he said what he said to me, I was like, oh, the revolving door just slowed way down. And had I stayed a little longer inside of my situation and made a separate choice that my roommate at that time gave me, I would have had a totally different outcome in the world.
Wow.
And I had to then not, and it took me 10 years to recover that time. Now, I could have probably recovered it in 2 to 3 years, maybe. Maybe it still would have taken 10, but it would have been a lot different looking. And it probably, I don't know what it would have looked like. It just would have been a different opportunity. But
Mhm.
it was that moment where I thought, and because when she had told me about the revolving door, I was in my 20s at that time. Um, I just thought my door just slowed down. And
Mhm.
now I got to wait. And it was a long wait. And it was, I mean, I had to deal with, crazy behavior, abusive behavior, physical behavior. Um, you know, I'm lucky to have gotten off that ranch alive because he was so not in his right mind. And, why would I put myself in that situation? But I
Mhm.
wasn't listening. And I was so afraid to face my own internal music and be truthful with myself. And
It's
it is the same thing
fear.
with your health and fitness. It
It's
is the
fear.
same thing with the fat. I've seen people where they do things, they get the get rich quick version of weight loss, and they bring 30 extra pounds back of the 20 that they just left.
Mhm. Yeah.
And
It
they
always
until they
comes back.
until they give up. And
Yeah.
then they give up and they say it doesn't work for me. And it did. You just weren't listening. You were trying to get to the end goal before making the pit stops and getting
Mhm.
refueled.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
It's so
see like
sad.
that's life. Like that's all of life.
That's life. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Shoots and ladders, y'all. Shoots and ladders.
It's so,
Or you can
so
do
common.
Candyland. I don't care which one. It's all the same.
Right. Right. Oh my gosh. It's fear. It's the
It
fear
is.
of looking inside because I think through my work since I had that moment of feeling empty and
Hmm.
like, oh shit.
Hmm.
I also have learned like in the last year that I have a gate, I think, in human design that is I tend to get stuck in this question and this question of like what's the purpose of all of this and that like empty feeling. It's like the and I'm no expert in this, but when I'm in that, I can either be in my purpose in the what is the point of all of this, or
Hmm.
I can be in the rock bottom. And so if I take that question and I go too far the wrong way, that's where my like depressive episodes and like then I end up having another awakening because I'm in the wrong, I'm asking it the wrong way
Yes.
versus like the what's the point of all of this? Like, well, the point of all of this is to find yourself, to love yourself, to discover your gifts, to create your life, to realize your power, to be the healthiest, most healed, like badass version of you possible. Like when I'm
Yes.
not in there, I will go and some of these like stints of what's the purpose of this has been like, oh, scary, like not a fun time at all.
Hmm.
But I think like through all of my work in the last 10 years of like my body of work that is like food, fitness, and
Hmm.
self-worth essentially and authenticity, the craziest discovery that I made that was that we are inherently worthy, which I was looking for a different
100%.
answer it
Yes.
originally, right? Because you go into that and that's very triggering when you don't believe, when you don't feel it. It's very
Yes.
triggering to find that answer. It's like,
Yes.
oh,
Yes.
that's what I'm looking for. Shit.
Yes.
So I went in and I've like tested this so many different ways and the book, like the books, it's just insane the hours. The the other thing that I discovered through this was that we aren't born with a concept of self-worth. So you're born worthy of it, but you have to build it, right? It's just like your physical body, it's just like your wealth. It's just if you don't learn how to have ownership over it and how to create it for yourself, you're always inherently worthy of it.
Hmm.
But the funny thing about worthiness is that it does get programmed and wired from other people. And so you come to this place where you're doing all the things and you're empty. And it's
Yep.
because no one ever taught you how to build you.
Your self-worth within.
Uh-huh. Yeah, because you do have to build it and you have to take ownership over it. And so,
Mm-hmm.
although you are worthy, it's kind of like the affirmations, just saying it doesn't build it.
No, you have to own it, know it, feel
And
it.
then trying to find the work to do to actually build it was
Right?
like, yeah, I mean, this has been like my 10-year rabbit hole that I like. If I could talk about nothing else in my life, it would be the self, the authenticity, the like all these parts of the person. And people are like,
Yes.
well, what's my protein goal? And I'm like, girl, I don't even care about your protein goal. Like,
You have to get, I'll say it again, I've said it before, and it's really like part of my whole mission in life too is you have to get to your rawest, purest self of truth.
oh, it's so scary.
Yeah, you only then can you be your most authentic self.
This is my question, my last question.
Okay.
I love this conversation. So, what does it feel like for you now that you can access that? Like when you're writing now, or when you're like, I get to go be with myself, like what does that feel like?
It's such a
Because you
great
used to run from it,
space.
right? You
Yeah.
used to run from
It's
it.
such a beautiful space. And then when I don't do it, I feel like I've just robbed myself. I rob Tara. Yes, I'll speak in third person. I rob myself of the richness of what's available in the moment of I like to see it as like a pure God moment. It's pure God connection.
Mhm.
And when I don't give myself that every day at some portion of the day, I try to do it in the morning. Sometimes I don't. I'm not going to be like, do it every day. I don't sometimes. But to have that moment, that feeling, that experience, it's like, it's so good.
Mhm.
It's so good. And
Mhm.
then you just, your whole body feels so good. Everything
Mhm.
feels so good. And I think because I know that now, that's what keeps me going back to it. And I recently slipped off of it, when I got this new job, like back in the doing. And I was like, oh my God. And then
Mhm.
immediately doing starts becoming like not happy, not happy, not happy. And I was like, oh my God, I forgot to do the things I know to do every day. Okay, get back to it, get back to it, get back to it. It's that feeling of just feeling your body with that inner God richness is what I like to call it. It's
Yeah.
it feels it feels beautiful. And then
Yeah.
I am beautiful as a result. I
Mhm.
am beautiful. Like I recognize that beauty of who I am, putting my feet on the earth outside and breathing in the air and pulling in that good energy and reminding myself like I am amazing because I am
And
and I
this is
am worthy.
amazing. Yeah.
Yes. And everything around me is amazing. And I,
Yeah.
I still thank God. Thank you for the house. Thank you for the food. Thank you for the clothing. Thank you for everything.
The first time
Mm,
I experienced like that level of true gratitude,
yeah.
because I didn't have the emotional capacity to even feel, I didn't have a very large emotional capacity to feel positive feelings. So when I really got connected to that, I cried.
Yes.
And I was the girl that didn't cry. So I was like, oh my God, I'm crying and I'm happy.
Yes.
And we had moved down here and I was like frolicking around outside crying. And people are like, she's nuts. She's
Yeah.
clearly
No,
nuts.
just
That
that's like
girl
the
is crazy.
flow. That is the flow, right? Like I even like when I'm doing affirmation writing or whatever and it brings me to tears because you're just so in the presence of love. So
Yes.
much
Oh,
love. It's
I
blissful.
heard this. I heard this the other day. I can't remember the exact quote, but in the energetics of emotions and states, authenticity is like something like 100 times more powerful than the frequency of love. And when I heard
Wow.
that, I was like, whoa, because
Wow.
it's true. Like, think about, because if it's not coming from an authentic place, like it loses its frequency, right?
And
And so
and
love
that's
itself needs to
yeah.
come from that frequency. It just blew my mind. And I was like, this is the power of what I do with people. Like
Well,
that, right?
because I feel what you just said, the context and the foundation of authenticity is love.
Yeah,
Like that's just what it
right.
is.
Because you have to love yourself to be authentic.
Yes.
And
Yes.
oh, that was
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
loaded. I'm like, that
Yeah.
is so good. I could write a whole, I'm gonna write 10 pages just on that. Like that was so good. But I guess like part of me really, a big part of me really views all of this as like it's separate metabolisms. And so everyone's always like hyper fixated on their physical metabolism, but it's like you have this mental, emotional metabolism and this like spiritual metabolism. And when you can really get all three of those going, just please look the fuck out because life is
Yes.
about to get
Yes.
so good,
Because
better than you ever imagined.
it's like
It will
that
get,
well-oiled machine.
yeah,
And
it
it just
gets
starts going. Yeah.
better. The better it gets, the better it gets. And
Yes.
like it's insane to me.
It's amazing.
Oh, it's so fun.
Well,
It's so,
I just want to say thank you because I'm like, oh gosh, this is
I
getting
know
long. And I'm like, we
we
should
will stay here
go
all
on
day.
forever. Yeah, because it's juicy, it's fun, it's awesome. But, you know, what is the one thing? Let's see. What is the one tool you'd like to leave people with? How, okay, what's the first step
Mm.
in rewiring your inner knowing such that you can begin that journey of really living your most authentic self?
Ooh, that's a good one. I For me, I always go back to the lack of it. And when I go to the lack of it, it's like it's what I want and what I don't want. And all it is it's all feelings.
Mm-hmm.
I I feel the lack of something and I don't like
Mm-hmm.
how that feels and I want this
Mm-hmm.
because I want to feel like this. Just identifying that I think is the first step because until you can identify that and start to own where you are,
Mm-hmm.
the most profound and long-lasting transformations are built on a foundation of ownership, even if you hate where you're at. And that's the hardest part is owning if you don't like where you are.
Yes. And I just pulled a card and it's so funny. This throat of mine today. The card is remove blockages. So I feel like that's really what you're saying. And you start there is when you feel the block, when you
Mm-hmm.
feel the block, when you feel the emptiness,
Can you honor that you feel
yeah,
that?
you feel
Can you
it.
say like, I don't, I can feel something, like
Yes.
validate that.
Yes. And the awareness of it is the beginning of the removal of it because
Mm-hmm.
there is a block in there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want to say that for all that are listening, I'm just going to pull up all known and unknown blockages from all timelines, past lives and present, pulling all the known and unknown timeline, pulling all the known and unknown blockages, lineages. Sorry, I'm just doing a little intuitive stuff here. So the lineages, because as you were saying, as we were saying, the blockages and all those conversations come from handed down conversations over time, over generations, over lineages. So pulling all of those up, removing those out, sending them all back for justice wherever they need to
Mm-hmm.
go. Thank you, God, removing those and increasing your clarity and your awareness and increasing your ability to hear the conversations that are ready to be removed. And all it is like in the known and unknown space of that, like when you're in that space of the emptiness or the sadness or whatever, if you just quiet your mind, you'll hear the conversation. And when you
Mhm.
hear what it is you're saying to yourself, write it down. Because the first
Yeah.
step to removing it is awareness. Because once the ego recognizes, shit, she just wrote it down. Damn it can't
Mhm.
play anymore. And
No,
it'll keep trying to play.
you got to
But
shine
now
the
that you,
flashlight.
yeah,
Yeah.
when exactly, when you're like, oh, I got you. I got you. I
Yeah.
see you right there. Write it
Like
down.
cops and robbers. Once the
Yep.
flashlight,
You're
they're out of there.
done. You're done. So, yeah.
Shining
So
that
I just
flashlight.
want to leave everybody with, remove your blocks, allow yourself to get quiet. And then you could do it for any area of your life, whether it's romance,
Yeah.
finances, career, parenting, wherever something isn't feeling good. But at
Mhm.
the end of the day, this was a conversation about health and well being and fitness and rewiring the conversations that stop you from getting up and doing what you say you're going to do with your food or what you say you're going to do with your exercise. Like
Mhm.
it really does take something. And if I can do it, anyone can do it. Anyone can do it. Anyone can do it. So I want to leave everybody with that. Like you can do it. I always
You
think of
just,
that.
yeah, you just have to decide. And honestly, like writing writing down the things you shine the flashlight on
Yes.
and understanding that when you're writing that, there might be a little bit of victim and a little bit of blame and a little bit of like
Yep.
shenanigans going on.
Yep.
If you would go put your hands on a barbell for 30 minutes or some dumbbells for 30 minutes and then come back and reframe all of that with some compassion. And maybe
Yes.
you
And
can't, maybe
love.
you don't have the bandwidth yet, but just think forward thinking like that because
Yes.
everybody was always doing the best they could with what they had. No one meant to do this to you, you
No.
know? And
And
that's
the
how you,
thing is no one did do it to us. No one did it to us. We just took it on. Like, I'll take that on. I'll believe
yeah,
it. And it's like, no,
yeah.
you don't have to.
And so like owning that and saying like no one meant to do this to me is
No.
the beginning of reframing
Right.
the victim
The
because it's
conversation.
disempowering. But
It is.
that's the last thing I would say is like move your body and go do something that makes you feel strong because that is going to send signals to your brain and it's going to change your thoughts. And now it's so much easier to rewrite the narrative in your mind because nothing makes you feel more badass than slanging around some 30-pound dumbbells like it ain't no
Oh my
thing.
God.
Like,
Right.
right? Like,
I love it
what
when I'm
makes
like
you
doing my I don't know what these things are called, but whatever, the
feel
press,
rich?
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always like, yeah. Especially when I
Yeah.
have to do the 20-second, 8 cycles of twenty
Oh,
second tens. Oh man.
and it's burning.
Yeah, and it's burning. And I'm like, oh my God. Yeah, it's great.
It's all
Well,
these.
thank you. Thank you
You're welcome.
so much, Kindi. I just always am so honored to have you on the show. And of course, I hope we get to do it again. But
Yeah. So good.
but thank you. And to all of you
Thank you.
listening, please tune in every other Sunday. Thank you for listening to your. Thank you for coming on this healing adventure today. If you're starting to see how everything is falling into place for you, consider rating the show and sharing it with one of your friends. Keep that spirit alive and join me next week, same place, same time. Have a great week.